Hey there, toy people. Azhelle Wade here, and welcome back to another episode of the Toy Coach Podcast, making it in the toy industry. This is a weekly podcast brought to you by thetoycoach.com. Okay, my guest today is a friend, and her name is Dr. Gummer, and you might know her from Dr. Gummer's Good Play Guide. A number of my students have posted in our Facebook group that their toy is accredited by her incredible program, so I'm just so excited to have her here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Azhelle.
Yes. So I want to just give a little bit of your backstory. You're a research psychologist specializing in child development. You've worked for over 20 years to promote the value of play and positive parenting in child development. Dr. Amanda Gummer has founded the research consultancy Fundamentally Children and the consumer-facing platform Dr. Gummer's Good Play Guide. And she's also an NED for or NED for Families in Focus CIC. We'll have to get into what that is. A founding member of the Children's Activities Association, a Genius of Play ambassador, a judge for the Future Skills category of the Play for Change Awards, a WIT mentor, a board advisor for a number of small mission-driven startups in the children's space as well. I don't know how she has the time. So, Dr. Amanda Gummer, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to dive into more of what you do and how you help people.
Oh, thanks, Azhelle. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk about play till the cows come home. So it's great to have an opportunity to talk with you today. So yeah, I guess I've been involved in play throughout my life. My dad used to work for toy companies. He started off with Palatoy and did the Action Man stuff, and then he worked for Mattel, and so I've kind of grown up in the toy industry. I did earned my stripes, dressing up as a Sylvanian bunny for toy shows and demonstrating at toy fairs. So it's been a part of my life forever. But everything that I've done in my life has shown me that play is the silver bullet. It's the answer to so many of our problems, and it's not stigmatized. It's not like an intervention. It's just play's what we do, and the more we do it, the better it gets.
Ooh, I love that. I mean, there's so many questions. Your dad was in sales in the toy industry, right? Is that what?
Yeah.
And tell me what it was like growing up in that environment. Did you feel like your dad had like the most fun job?
Yeah, we had lots of friends always wanted to come around and play at our house. And I remember when Astro Wars and the little Pac-Man things first came out, those first electronic handheld games, giving away my age a little bit there. But I remember when they came out, and my dad was like, "Oh, what are these? I have no idea." So me and my brother got given them to go work out how to play these. And we were like the coolest kids in the class because we had all these very fun new electronic games that we were playing. And then we had to sort of explain to my dad so that he could go and sell them. And yeah, it was great.
Wait, you explained the toy to your dad so he could go sell them?
Yeah, that's at age 8 or whatever we were doing.
That's amazing. So you were actually making money for the family at age 8.
Yeah, doing my thing.
Okay, so I want to get into, now we know a little bit about your background, how you got into this industry. I would love to hear more about the detail of what your company does. Well, it seems like you have kind of two, because there's developmentally, wait, hold on. I want to get the name right. Fundamentally Children and the Good Play Guide. So those are two. Yeah. So the research consultancy, Fundamentally Children, how does that work? What's that all about? And honestly, I've been wanting to ask you since I met you, how did you start that? How did you do that?
Okay, so it's two sides of the same coin, but it's under the same company, but it's just two different divisions, if you like. And Fundamentally Children is really where I started, and it came about because one of the companies that my dad was working for wanted to check whether a toy that was doing a games console that was doing well in Japan would work in the UK market. Okay. And at the time, I'd finished my PhD in psychology. I'd been teaching special needs kids in Hong Kong. I'd developed educational programs, and I had 2 young children. I was wondering what I was going to do with my life, and I was lecturing in child development for the Open University. So
wait,
I was like,
I'm sorry, I have to say, this woman had a PhD in psychology, 2 young children, had been teaching, and was still like, what am I going to do with my life? I haven't done enough. Yeah, I mean, wow. Okay, go on.
Okay, so that wasn't all simultaneously, but yeah. So I had my kids, and I was back in the UK, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" And so this research opportunity came, and I think back then, there wasn't the focus on child development within research. Market research was market research. So, people were used to going, oh, 8 out of 10 kids like this, 4 out of 10 kids said that, and that was it.
Oh,
And because of my background in the sort of child development and psychology, I was like, okay, well, 8 out of 10 kids said this, and that might be because at this age, children tend to do that, and that, which means if you change this about the product, they might be more willing to sort of engage with it. And it was that extra bit of the sort of the strategy and the so what that it was Flair Leisure, I think, was the company at the time. And they were like, oh, we've never had anybody give us research like this before. Can you do some more? So I was like, okay, I can do some more. And then they recommended me out. And I feel so lucky because I was able to do it slowly and build the business up whilst I was looking after my children. And it just evolved. And that was 20 odd years ago. And I've never really looked back.
wow. So you just finished your PhD. Had you gone and worked full time, or did you just automatically end up in entrepreneurialism or entrepreneurship?
No, no, I work full time. I went from my PhD. I was running a charity in London that was helping families at risk of breakdown. And it wasn't that there was anything sinister going on. The families were just not coping. It was just, and again, I went in and I could just see what happened when you sat and played with the kids, and when you encourage, and when you help the parents play with the kids, and I
Yeah.
understand that there wasn't a right or a wrong way, and you just let the kids play, and that sort of bonding and the power of play to help vulnerable families thrive was mind-blowing. So, and I didn't know it at the time, but again, it's just everything I've done has made me more and more convinced that play is the answer to so many of our issues that we face today. So yeah, so I did that first, and then I was living in Hong Kong for a couple of years, teaching English and special needs, and developing an after-school program for children within Hong Kong, because the language of schools had gone back from English to Mandarin. So there was a big demand for English language education programs. So I developed some programs out there. So I was working for a good few years before I got the entrepreneurial bug.
Oh, I see. Okay. But ever since. So I want to talk like fundamentally children, how does it work? Like, do you use outside sources or services to perform your market research? Are you on the ground gathering all the people, holding the focus groups, sending out the surveys yourself, and then compiling all that data and dissecting it for your clients? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm really lucky. I've got an amazing team around me, and we've got psychologists and people with education backgrounds and stuff. So that, but we do a lot of the research in house, and we have
Okay.
international partners. So we have Tanina, who's our US director of research,
Mhm.
based in New Jersey. So we've got a testing center both in the States and in the UK, and then we have
Wow.
partners around the world. One of the things I'm really picky about is our research methodology, because it's really important to me that you observe kids playing naturally, because you can get kids to say anything if you ask them the right questions, and you put a camera in front of them and give them a new toy and go, what do you think? They go, yeah, it's great, because they know that that's what they're supposed to say, right? So if you're actually
Yeah.
wanting proper research and really to get under the skin of a product or a brand, and to know what kids really think, you've got to do it naturally, and it's very observational, and there's a skill to that. And I think we're quite particular about that. So we've got partners in different countries who have native language speakers in each of those territories. So if we are doing something in France or
Okay.
whatever, we use those partners to make sure that we've got that authenticity, and we don't miss those little nuances that you get when you're observing kids. So yeah, so we've been doing that, and I stay as active in the research as I can. But I have, like I said, I've got a great team who really believe in the way that we do things, and I do think we approach things slightly differently. We have the play cafe in our offices that we use to just, day in, day out, we're observing kids playing, and it gives us that. I think it gives us something different to a sort of traditional market research agency.
I would love, do you have a story you could share? Maybe an older story from years ago, so you're not breaching any confidentiality, where your research really created a big change in a product that ultimately led to its success?
Yeah, so there was one of the early research projects we did actually was for like a My First Computer,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for very, very young kids. And it had a big joystick and some big buttons, and but it didn't sell, and the kids were getting frustrated, and they weren't, and they didn't enjoy playing with it. And it's because there was some little buttons that really, like the volume and the on off switch and everything, and they were quite stiff and needed quite firm pincer grip, and the age of the children didn't have that they were playing with it didn't have sufficiently developed pincer grip to be able to move the buttons and to be that precise. So they couldn't access a lot of the features. And it was when they sort of when we user tested it and we realized that, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they changed it, and I think it went on to do really well. And there are a few things like that, is especially in the app world, actually, onboarding stuff, people who write play for preschoolers, when actually kids know the arrow. They don't know that, they can't read play, but they know what the play arrow means. And there's things like that there's a sort of common pitfalls people make when they're designing toys, and it's amazing how many people make the same mistakes.
That would be an incredible resource if you made a document of the top 5 mistakes people make.
I think that's in the pipeline.
It is. Okay, yeah, that would be amazing. So let me know when it's available so I can link it in this episode because that sounds like a great one. So how long does the research process take? Because if somebody's listening to this and they're already thinking like, oh, I want to work with Dr. Amanda Gumner, how long does it take from here's my product to getting the results like you described?
So that's one of the reasons that we set up the Good Play Guide. So we were doing the research for companies, and they were like, this is great, we love the insights, but it's quite time consuming and quite costly to get everybody in, recruit, hire a venue and all this sort of stuff. And at the same time, my kids were at school, and all the parents from their class were like, you work in toys, what good for kids? And how do I know if the thing that they're asking me for is going to be any good for them? Right. And so we created a play guide. And what that does is the accreditation there can take as little, we do that turn around in a couple of weeks if needed, because we can just get the product in, we can test it very quickly. And it's because we have a network of play clubs and play testers that we use on a regular basis to do that sort of Good Play Guide accreditation piece. But the more in-depth focus group, where you're maybe comparing ages of children and how they engage with it, or whether a product's good for special needs or stuff like that, that takes a bit longer. But we normally, we're pretty agile, and we've turned some pretty big projects around, pretty quickly. So yeah, we pride ourselves on being able, because we have that network ready set up. We've got the play cafe downstairs. We've got a network of schools and nurseries and special needs schools and after school clubs that we have regular contact with. So we are pretty well set up like that.
Okay, so I'm looking at your website, Dr. Gummer's Good Play Guide. And one of my students actually did just get awarded, I think, your good, I don't know if it's Good Activities Guide, maybe, because she had a sticker book. So talk to me a little bit about the process of people becoming accredited through your program.
Okay, so we test the products with kids. That's really important.
Okay.
And on multiple children as well, because, with kids, they could just be having a bad day, and they could give you, and parents, we are very particular about the way that we test, and we test with multiple children on multiple occasions, and we create a report, and then we have our experts look at it, and all the experts have a background in child development education, something relevant to enable them to sort of pull out that developmental benefits, which is why we're able to then bullet point what the product does for the kids. We're able to make sure it matches the age that the manufacturers are saying it's aimed at. And we're able to get some sort of really in-depth expert quotes, which we're getting so many great feedback from the clients, because it helps with the selling, right? Because the sales team don't necessarily know what products do, but if you've got a one-pager that says, okay, this is good for fine motor control and turn taking and social development, that's something that the sales team can tell their customers, and the customers can, the shops and the retailers can tell their customers. And it helps people make informed decisions, and from a sustainability point as well, because you're buying the things that are going to do well for your kids, and they're not going to end up in landfill after 5 minutes. So it's a win-win. And also you're building loyalty because people go, okay, well, that worked. And I know it's a good toy. And so I'm going to buy more from that brand because we know they make good toys. So it's just really just raising the bar in the industry, helping people do the right thing by kids and making good toys, helping people find those toys. And yeah, that's the reason behind it, really.
I'm curious what you would say to somebody that maybe is developing a toy that they believe is good for the industry, but maybe they're getting pushback because it's not the typical push button, wow, surprise, sparkle, purple, like toy, and they're feeling kind of discouraged because they're like, I really want to create this product, but this industry doesn't seem to get it. What would you say to that person?
So I would look at different markets for a start, because I think the European market is very different from the American market. And I think the UK sort of sits in between. But in terms of more traditional play values, the kind of the wooden construction toys or the toy trains, that the kind of the old fashioned, I don't like saying old fashioned because it feels negative, but it's not meant to be. But that traditional simple play patterns that are really good for kids' imagination, they're still very popular in Europe. Whereas in the States, it is very much license driven. It's got to have some gimmicks and some lights and some sounds and stuff. So I would say that if you're getting pushback in the US, maybe look at other markets, but also look at maybe doing some kind of proof of concept. So impact measurement studies to show that it's got benefits. Because if you can prove the benefits, you then can get into the homeschool market. You can get into schools themselves. You can get into the childminder settings, those kind of things, because they are looking for stuff that is going to help the kids thrive. And it's not just going to be the next pink, sparkly, gimmicky toy. They're looking for stuff with credibility and substance. So yeah, I love it when people come to us with something that's been really well thought through and well designed, and they want to take that evidence-based approach to marketing and to sort of further product development.
Can we talk more about, no one's ever on this podcast talked about taking it to the homeschool market or any kind of school market. So have you helped your clients do that? If so, what's the process of doing that?
Yeah, so we do. So the first thing is to check how it helps kids develop. So that's a sort of a bit of a focus group and some observed play testing and seeing what the skills it is that product helps develop. And then it's about developing things like lesson plans or activity plans. Lesson plans are more for the schools, but the educational activity plans that we develop for clients can go in. They can be sort of downloaded from the website, or they can go into the box and be part of the product itself. And it just gives you that. It gives parents that steer to say, okay, this is going to help my kids learn these skills. Therefore, we can do it. And what's really great is when you see products that have got a bit more versatility in them. So you go, okay, well, the main play pattern for this toy is this, but if you do this and this with it, then it opens up a whole new area of learning, which is great for kids' development. In either it extends the age range or it just widens the curriculum that you can apply it to. So it's great for helping people see the wider benefits of their products and make the most of communicating that the educational value to the parents and the educators.
No, that does seem really valuable. So tell me a little bit about, I've talked about your successes and the companies that you've built, but I want to know a little bit about your struggle. Have you experienced any struggle in building this business in the UK, trying to expand it globally?
Oh, yeah. I don't know any entrepreneurs that haven't. But yes, so I would say my biggest headache, certainly recently, I want to say, I'm gonna put my hands up and say it was a misstep. We tried e-commerce. Oh my goodness, that was not fun.
E-commerce for what? For your clients?
Yeah. So we were trying to. So we've got the reviews on the Good Play Guide, and we were like, well, let's sell the products ourselves. We can act as a retailer and sell them. Absolute no. It muddied what we were doing because we stopped being that independent authority on toys and play, because people were like, well, you're selling the products, of course you're going to say they're good. So that was a no. And just the logistics and dealing with the courier service and oh my goodness, and the returns and the stock levels and no.
I didn't know that you were doing that.
No, well, we stopped doing it a while back now. It was a few years ago, and it was an expensive learning curve. But yeah, so Well, it's not been smooth sailing all the way, but we learn from it and we move on. And actually, I think we're better for it because we're much clearer on who we are and what we do. And we are experts in child development and play, and we want to help people make good stuff for kids. And that's what we do. We're not a retailer. We don't want to be a retailer ever.
You could always the easier route. You probably already do it. Is having the affiliate links on your site.
Yeah.
Right. That's the easier route, no longer.
Yeah. There were some very good reasons for doing it at the time.
Okay.
If you said if there's one thing could you not have done, that would be it. That would be absolutely it. And there were several other things as well, I'm sure, but you live and learn.
I love the honesty. Yeah, it's awful when it's your own business and you make a misstep. It's just because not only are you embarrassed and ashamed, but you have to fix it. And it's not like,
right?
Yeah, it's not like when you make a mistake at your job and you're just like, oh, I'm going home. It's 5 p.m. It's like you made a mistake and now you've got to apologize. You've got to fire people. You've got to hire people. You've got to take money out of somewhere. You've got to do so much work while you're being embarrassed and ashamed. I've had that happen. It was a sad time. It was a sad time. I cried so much. Anyway,
I don't trust people who've never made mistakes. I just think it doesn't feel right. I think
it's unrealistic. No, yeah, it's.
And I like that. What is it? If you're not making mistakes, you're not making anything. I like that approach.
Oh my gosh. Or you're not. Wait, there was one day I was feeling sad because I'm stressed out with my launch right now. My husband walks by me and he goes, "Remember, you're a hermit crab." And he walks away and I was like, what? And then he came back and he's like, oh, did you not see the TikTok I sent you? And I was like, no. And he said, apparently someone said that hermit crabs, they grow out of every shell, so they grow out of one shell and they go on to the next shell. And he's like, so pain is just you growing out of the one shell. And I was like, oh, okay, I get your analogy now. Your metaphor. So random. Okay, so that's great. Yeah, we all make mistakes. We grow, we learn, we move on to our next shell. What advice would you give somebody who is thinking about developing a product in the toy industry?
Okay, so first of all, do your research. And that isn't me plugging. I mean, go out and look at toy shops and see what's there. I'm not trying. That wasn't me pitching for business at all. Go into toy shops, talk to parents, talk to children, see what they do, and make sure that somebody hasn't already done it. Because good ideas are great, but lots of people have some really good ideas. And if you are the second person developing the Rubik's Cube, you're just another person developing a Rubik's Cube, right? So there's a lot of people that come to us and they've gone, oh, and especially with board games, I find they're like, we've got this great idea for a board game. It's revelationary. We've never been done before, and it's great. And we're remortgaging our house to I'm like, please don't, please don't stop. Make sure, play test it, make sure the rules are good, make sure your instructions are really clear, all of that kind of stuff. Just get the basics right first. But I think getting into the shops and seeing what's out there and trying to figure out where your product would sit on the shop. I've seen some really great products fail because one of the best examples was this play case, and it was a little sort of kids carry-on luggage that had a little pull-out bit that had all the crayons and a board game and stuff in it. And the idea was that you took the case onto the plane or stuck it in the car, and then you just took out the little capsule thing. But the shopkeepers didn't know whether to put it in with luggage or to put it in with toys. And so because they couldn't see where it was going to sit in the store, they didn't buy it. So it was a great concept, but it didn't fit. And especially with the way buyers in the big guys work, they've got a boys buyer, they've got a girls buyer, they've got a preschool buyer, they've got a luggage buyer, they've got a toy buyer, they've got a book buyer. So a book that with a toy, that throws them sometimes. And
I've told people this. Yes, I always tell people this. I'm like, it's better just to keep them separate because one buyer will be afraid to buy it from under another buyer. They'll say, I can't have books in the toy section. The book buyer will be upset. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's knowing that kind of that thinking like that, which is not an issue if you're just going to sell direct from your website. Right. You can do what you like, but if you're aiming to get into the big retailers, you've got to think about where it's going to sit on the shelf and be very clear about that. And so there's those kind of things. But I think just going out and just immersing yourself in it. Toy shops, schools, kids, just, get to know your audience.
So I've had someone on market research I've had a market research podcast before where we've talked about quantitative and qualitative, right? Quantitative, what being that it can be data that's measured, and qualitative is like the descriptive one, like things that are kind of how you feel about this. But what I want to ask you is, what would be your advice to give someone to get good research results? Like how do you ask a good quantitative data question? How do you ask a good qualitative data question for those people that are just doing the initial research? They're just going out to parents and asking. But I have a feeling like the people that I talk to that say like, oh yeah, I asked all my friends. I'm like, what did you ask them? Like, did you ask them like,
Yeah, right.
hey, do you like this toy that I've spent my life savings developing? Because then of course they're going to say yes. So what's a good, how do you find good questions?
Yeah, so the name for that is social desirability effect. People will give you the answer they think you want to hear. And that's one of the tricks, especially with kids, in making sure that they know that you don't care. So I would try and get somebody who isn't, nobody likes being told they've got an ugly baby, right? You've put your life into this thing, and this is your thing that you care more about than anything else. And somebody's going, oh yeah, but really? So it's very hard to hear. So actually getting a third party to do that doesn't have to be a professional. It can just be, a friend or somebody, but somebody who it's not personal for. And getting them to do some of the play testing, taking it down to a local school, or, an after school club or something, and just saying, can you just, I'm just interested. Can you give us some honest feedback? And an easy way to do that so it doesn't feel personal is a questionnaire. So just a quick survey. Don't make it more than a page, because people will get bored and they won't fill it in. And if they do fill it in, they probably won't fill it in accurately. So just some really simple questions. Some things that you can compare, so you can sort of check over time. So these people said it was a 5. Okay, we've made this change. Now they're saying it's an 8. That's great. And then, but also things that where you get them an opportunity to say. One of my favorite questions is if you could tell the people who made this about it, what would you want them to know? So, if you could talk to the people who were making this toy, what would you want to tell them about it? And it just gives it, that opens up quite an interesting response from people. So that it's not, is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Do you not? It could be, I really like it. I just wish it came in blue. Or it could be, have you thought about adding this feature? Because a lot of the questions, if you ask closed questions and it's yes or no, or there's a number of options in terms of your responses, you get the data, you get the quantitative data that you can compare and contrast. And you can say, 8 out of 10 people said this, but actually the open-ended questions, they're the ones that really sometimes are so insightful. But you've got to do it in a way that reduces that social desirability effect and doesn't make people think that there is a sort of an answer that you're aiming for or that they should be giving.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, like the quantitative data just says like, if this is working, if it's not working, but the qualitative it tells you like what to do about it, right? Like it tells you like, okay, it's not working. So. Here's what to do about it. That's great. Yeah. Oh, I want to go more into this actually, but I know we have time. Come on, go give me some more. This is good stuff. Give me some more like questions. Okay. Like, do you normally do questions that are like 1 to 5 versus yes or no? So you have that measurability. And if so, like, how do you, like, what kind of questions would people ask if they want to test, let's say like the design aesthetic of a product?
Okay. So kids particularly, but adults as well. Yeah. It's much easier to answer a question if you've got a frame of reference. So if I developed a new toy and I was like, I want to know what people think, I would go and I would buy its closest competitors. So if it was I'm trying to think of sort of, if it was a building block or something, I would get some Lego, I would get some Duplo, I would get some magnetic, all of that. And I would be putting it in and I'd be like, what do you like about this? Which of these do you like most for a start? So you rank them in order. Why? What's the best thing about each one? How does that compare to the others? Because if you can compare and contrast, and especially if you're doing stuff with sort of licenses, okay, so we all like Peppa Pig, but how does this compare to Peppa Pig? Is it better in this way? Is it worse in that way? What does it, what do you think the differences are? It gives you something concrete to tag or to align your answers with, and it makes you go, okay, well, I understand that in that frame. If you say, give me a number from 1 to 10, how much you like this, and they go 8, well, an 8 for person A could be a 4 for person B because they're just naturally optimistic and see the good in things. It doesn't mean anything. You've got to anchor the research to something. So it's good. So the numbers are only really useful if it's, I give it a 5 here, now I'm giving it an 8 because. So that's fine. Or I give this one a 5 and I'm giving this product a 7. Again, you've got a frame of reference. But giving somebody a new product and going, give me a number of how much you like it from 1 to 10, and doing that for 100 people doesn't tell you anything.
This is a very good point, like a comparative analysis. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And anchoring your questions, anchoring your research in something. That's really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I guess 20 years.
But also, if you're going to ask a question, you've got to know what it means if they give you a 10, or if they say, you're asking a question, okay, and they give you an answer, you've got to know what that then means for your product. So if they go, okay, well, it's too expensive. Well, okay, so does that mean that you would buy it if it was less expensive? Because that's not necessarily the same thing. They can say that I'm not going to pay $50 for this, but it doesn't mean that they would pay 30 because they don't like the fact that it's blue, or, there's
right.
You've got to make sure you're not over-interpreting data as well, and making sure that you understand what to do with the answers you get. Because otherwise there's no point in asking the questions if you're not going to do anything when people give you the answers.
Do you have a favorite book you like about this topic?
There is a book called How to Write Questionnaires, which I've used, and that's I can find it. It's quite an old book actually, but it was one of the things I used during my research, like my studying, and it's something I've gone back to. And it's all about sort of if you are doing a survey, and people quite often get into habit. So if 1 is always bad and 5 is always good, and they like something, they'll just go down and tick 5, and they won't necessarily read all of the questions properly. So it's important that you mix them up, so that if you're asking questions, sometimes it's a positive question, sometimes it's a negative question, so that you actually encourage people to read
and think
and answer every question, rather than just going, yeah, I really like it, 5's good, tick, 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 tick. Because that's not helpful.
Because they're just trying to get it done. Oh, that's really good. So tell me, what's your biggest success lately? Like, what would you key as like your biggest success, either 2023 or 2022?
I'm really proud of the STEAM toy framework that we've developed with the Toy Association. That's been amazing. It was, I think we developed it in 2021, and we launched the accreditation program the following summer. And the response to that has just been so gratifying. And because we developed the framework, we made it open access. Anybody can go on the Toy Association's website and see what the framework looks like. They can use it for their own product development. So it felt very, very in line with my ethos of just helping people make good stuff for kids and raising standards within the industry. And then I think people wanted some kind of accreditation for it. And so the Toy Association came and said, well, will you run the accreditation program? And I think, just the response to that it's just been lovely. And people really value the stamp. And it's the same with the Good Play Guide stuff at the accreditations as well. I think once people know that you can fail, and quite a lot of people do fail, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because actually a failure on any of those accreditations actually prevents you from having a product that's going to damage your reputation and damage your brand, because you can pull it early, you can fix the problem, you can then resubmit it for the accreditation without charge, because we have that as a sort of a mechanism. So if your product doesn't pass first time, you get you get a report, you get told what's wrong, why it hasn't made the grade, but then you can resubmit for free. And I think that's really amazing. Important in making sure that people can benefit from it, because otherwise it's just a bit of a tick box exercise. So we're all about supporting people in making good toys, and people when when their products have failed and we've been talking to them about why and what's happened, they've got their designers in, they've gone, right, we need to fix this. This is really important. Thank you so much for highlighting this issue. We hadn't realized that was an issue. And it's just been, it's been really, you never want to give people bad news, do you? You never want to say, this has failed, it hasn't made it. But actually, the spirit in which it's been taken has been great. And then when they then fix the problem and they resubmit it and they get the stamp and then they shout about it and they're really proud of it, it's brilliant. I love it.
Oh, how long have you been doing the accreditation?
So we've been doing Good Play Guide.
The Good Play Guide,
since 2012.
Oh, wow.
And then the STEAM accreditation is only since 2021.
So the Good Play Guide, that's the one where you can reapply if you don't pass.
You can do both. It's for both of them.
Both.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Do you run the STEAM accreditation also?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
And that was part of the conversation when we were setting up the accreditation program with the STEAM, with the Toy Association. A couple of our sort of USPs, if you like. One is it's for the life of the product. It's an accreditation. It's not an award. So making sure that people knew that they could use it on their packages. It wasn't going to date. It wasn't going to be,
right.
They don't have to reapply every year. Because for me, if I'm a parent and I'm looking for products, I want to know what good toys there are. I don't necessarily want this year's best toy. I want to know that whatever it is good for my kids. So that was really important. So we made sure that the STEAM accreditation followed that. So as long as you don't make changes to the product, the accreditation is valid for the life of the product. And the other thing was, making sure that it was really clear on how to improve, and it wasn't a kind of pay to play or anything. And I think that was the other thing that was important when we were setting this up.
No, that's really valuable. There are definitely not a lot of awards like that in the toy industry. So that's really valuable. And you're actually doing the research. It's not even just, even some of the awards that are more reputable in the industry are still just people, adults sitting around a table of analyzing a product, not necessarily playing with the product with kids or seeing or watching kids play with the product. So that's really upstanding, I think.
Thank you. And that is one of the things that we're really sort of proud of and passionate about is
right.
If you're going to check a toy works, you've got to check it with the end users, right? And it's amazing what you learn. I learn from kids all the time that, you give them a product and you think they're going to play with it in a certain way, and then they take it off and play with it in a whole different way. And you're like, oh my goodness, that's,
They just do their own thing. I was like talking to a niece one time, and she was telling me how she took apart her Barbie dolls' bodies and started making new Barbie doll bodies. And I was like, okay, that's not what you're supposed to do with them, but I guess that's what you want to do. So maybe we need to make a new toy where you can make a monster Barbie or something, because clearly that's what you want to do. Okay, so my last question for you, I love to close out the podcast with this, is what toy or game blew your mind as a kid?
So again, probably giving my age away on this, I loved the pop-up Fisher-Price treehouse. And the fact that you're probably too young, Azhelle. It was this very cute treehouse, and I won it from a fancy dress competition for the Queen's Jubilee, and I'd got this treehouse, and it popped up, and so it looked like a tree, and it had a little sort of swing and stuff in it, but then you popped it up, and then there's this whole little world. And the kids and the characters could go down the slide, and they had a little swing, and it was a whole treehouse thing. But I love the fact that you then popped it back down, and it just looked like a tree. It's great.
I found it. Family treehouse. This is really cute. Okay. And actually, because you're you, I want to ask one more question. What toy or game blew your mind recently? That was a recent Good Play Guide winner that you were like, whoa, this is really cool.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. Because I like some of the sort of the more simple. I like some of the there's quite a lot of the board games and stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's been some really good board games. Probably some of the learning resources robots, the RC and Botley, those I think are a really good way of getting tech to young kids. I think they are.
Ooh. What is it?
They're really impressive. Botley. Botley. Yeah, from Learning Resources. That's great. There's there are just so many. I mean, some of the preschool stuff now, the really baby stuff. I like the multisensory stuff. So some of the Lamar stuff's been great. There's just so many. And then, things like Geomag, you can't, and the sort of the construction toys, you can't really go wrong with those. And I love the fact that they're becoming more environmentally friendly. And, you've got people are really trying to make that plastic sustainable. And I think that, that's great. Yeah, I think there's probably some really good ones I've missed out and I feel bad.
No, I think the Botley one is great. We got Family Treehouse, we got Botley. Those are perfect. I just want to have a toy to talk about with this episode. I love doing that. So where can people learn more about you, connect with you online, maybe apply to the Good Play Guide? Where should they go?
Okay, so probably the easiest place is the website. So goodplayguide.com to see the reviews. And there is a work with us page on that, but actually Fundamentally Children is the business page, and you can submit products through that. That's probably the easiest page, and that's where you can find out a bit more about some of our previous projects, our other services, training, research, consultancy, all those kind of things. And then, I'm on LinkedIn. So Amanda Gummer at LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here today. This was a really informative conversation. We got right to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Azhelle.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Talking to you.
Yeah, me too.
Likewise.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Making It in the Toy Industry podcast with Azhelle Wade. Head over to thetoycoach.com for more information, tips, and advice.